Well, hey jerks. I'm gonna do a little bit of a different video today, taking a little break from the car. It's been raining a lot here. Anyway, being a photographer, I've been a photographer for, I don't know, 10, 12, 13, 14 years, whatever. I have a lot of friends who are maybe looking to get into photography. Maybe they're just looking to buy a camera, and they've always asked me, what kind of a camera should I get? And 10 years ago, that was a pretty easy question. You know, you ask two questions and then you have maybe three choices that you might give to somebody who's looking for a camera. Today, it's not even close to easy because, to be completely honest, your cell phone camera is probably the best camera you'll ever have. And that's because it's the one that you'll always have with you. So cameras are completely useless when they are sitting on your shelf at home instead of in your pocket or purse or wherever when you're ready to use them. And anyway, I thought I would do something kind of cool. I would just sort of go through the cameras that I have, the ones that I use, and maybe talk about why, talk about brand loyalty and stuff like that. Anyway, so let's get started right away. The very first camera I wanted to talk about was probably my oldest camera that I don't use anymore, but this is one that I used the heck out of. And this was, this is a, oh, it didn't make the noise. This is a Canon, I'm sorry, this is a Sony, it's called a DSC W300. And it's a 13.6 megapixel, and I guess that was in the days when 0.6 megapixels really mattered. It's a little tiny, just whatever. It's got a little bit of a zoom on it. There we go. It takes some pretty decent pictures, and one of the reasons why I bought this one was at the time, it was probably really one of the best cameras you could get that was a small factor like this, that was sort of decent in lower light. And this is in a time where when you buy a small camera like this, unless you were shooting it outside in bright sunlight, it was absolute shit. It was just grainy, pixelated, terrible noisy pictures. So this was one of the better ones. And it even has a tiny little eye hole that you can look through there. I don't know why anybody would use that when it's got this big screen on the back of it, but you know, whatever. This says that it goes up to ISO 6400, and while it does, they're completely unusable. I wouldn't suggest going above 1600. So that was a 2008 Sony DSC W300. Let's move on to the Olympus Tough TG3. So this was purchased to replace a different Olympus camera that I had that was also a Tough. And because if I was going to go, like, say on vacation, or if I was going to go, I don't know, just somewhere I didn't want to risk one of my expensive cameras, I would take this. This is crush proof, and it's drop proof, and it's waterproof, and it's cold proof, or whatever. The reason why I bought this one specifically was at the time I was trying to do some underwater photography, and I wasn't happy with my older underwater camera, so I got this one like the day it was available. It's a 16 megapixel camera. Came out in 2014, by the way, only 2 years ago. They've already got a replacement for it, the TG4. I don't know if it's any better or not, but whatever. This one's interesting because it's got GPS in here, and it's also got Wi-Fi in there. So if, for whatever reason, if that's important to you, Wi-Fi might be important, or NFC might be important if you're looking to control things with your phone. I really don't understand why that would be important to the majority of people, but I don't know, for some people it is. I guess transferring them from the camera to your phone for immediate upload to Instagram or Facebook or whatever. But then at that point, I would just suggest that you use your cell phone. Most cell phones coming out lately, they also have the IP67, which is splash proof. Some of them are even more than that. Some of them are actually waterproof, so you can take them underwater. But yeah, this actually has an interesting feature on it, though, that I didn't realize until later. It's called microscope mode. And what it is, you put it on microscope mode, and kids love this, by the way. I gave this to some kids for the day, and they came back with some really interesting pictures. Anyway, you can get literally this close to what's down here, and I just took a picture of, you can't see that, maybe you can. I just took a picture of the writing on the paper. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the exact same picture with each one of these cameras of this scene that you're seeing here, and you'll see the difference or lack thereof of each camera and how it shoots. So yeah, let me just put that back on there. This actually has a little tiny zoom inside. You can't see what it's doing, but I can see that it's zooming. You're not going to see anything happen because this is waterproof. It has to be all inside the camera. Yeah, so beyond that, it takes pretty shitty pictures. This also says it goes to ISO 64. I really wouldn't go above 800 for this one because it takes some pretty shitty pictures. Anyway, let's move on to my Fujifilm X100S. This is another small form camera, and this is, in this little camera, there's an APS-C sensor. And what that means is this is the same sized sensor that you're going to find in all of the entry-level DSLRs out there from Nikon and Canon. One of the reasons why I bought this camera was I needed a camera that did absolute silent operation. So I couldn't have any noise coming from this camera. And I'm gonna take a picture, and I'm gonna put it right up to this microphone, and you'll hear the noise it makes when it takes a picture. Yeah, so hopefully you heard that. I was doing some behind the scenes photography for a major motion picture, and I couldn't take my big camera. I did, but I couldn't use my big camera during the filming because you can't have any noise happening. Yeah, so I needed something very quiet, but I also needed something that had very good quality. This, in addition to it being completely silent, it's also able to shoot in RAW. And that's very important to photographers because you take your pictures and then later you can adjust them a lot after the fact. Whereas you can't necessarily do that with cameras like these, which take in JPEG, and you kind of get what you get at that point. All right, the other cool things about this is it's also only 16 megapixel, but because the sensor is so much bigger than what's in here, I mean, this is basically, the sensor in here is basically the size of, I don't even think it's the size of my thumbnail, but this one, much bigger, probably that big. One of the downsides is this lens is not removable, and it is only 23 millimeter. Meaning there's no zoom whatsoever. You kind of get what you get. After some multiplication of the sensor size, I think it comes out to about a 35 millimeter camera. So it's pretty much great for street work. It's great for kind of the behind the scenes things that I was using it with. But otherwise, it's not good for a whole lot of other things that you want to, maybe if you wanted to go on vacation with this camera, you might be limited because if you're not right up next to the things that you're taking pictures of, you can't zoom in. Also, it's got a neat function on here, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not, but so the camera has, in its little viewfinder here, in this little viewfinder, it has an overlay of a, I don't know, it's actually got an LCD screen overlay, but right now I can see through it. If I hit this button, I'm sorry, this switch right here, it switches, and oh, you can't even see the difference. It doesn't matter, you can't see the difference, but basically when you hit that switch, it just switches over completely to the LCD, and it's also got some LCD overlay. I mean, it's a really, really interesting viewfinder, but then again, most people still don't really take pictures with their eye up next to the viewfinder. They're going to use this back screen, and this is one of the better back screens I've used. All right, moving on to the Panasonic GH4. Now this camera I bought for video. I don't plan on taking actual pictures with this. It's really just for video, because I do a lot of videos. The camera that I'm filming with right now is an actual Sony Handycam. That's the one I always use for my YouTube videos. But this would be more for short films and stuff like that. It's got this articulating screen that's really nice. This one is another 2014 model. And this is also only 16 megapixel, but again, it doesn't matter really because I'm not using it to take pictures. I'm really only going to be using it for taking videos or making films. Some very cool things about this. This does 4K video, and it is one of the very few cameras that does 4K video to the card inside here. Another cool thing is it will do certain video types at 200 megabits per second. And if you know anything about video, I don't know if you do or not, but that's huge. That is a huge number. So basically the 60p 1080 that I'm doing on this camera right here that you're watching is only in 24 megabit per second. The most video that comes out of cameras like this, you're basically gonna see 50 megabits per second. If you get super lucky, maybe 70, 75 megabits per second. So in most modes, this will do 100 megabits per second, but in certain modes, it'll do 200 megabits per second, which is just mind-blowing. It's really, really good. Other cool things is it is a removable lens, so you can do different lenses on this. Now, I have just the lens that it kind of came with on here. Not came with, I had to get this separately, but this is an actual lens built for the Micro Four Thirds mount, which this is. And the Micro Four Thirds mount is a little bit smaller, the sensor inside is actually a little smaller than it is in this camera, but it's definitely bigger than it was in these little point and shoots. I do have an adapter that gets put on this that I can use all of my bigger lenses on that I'll talk about in a second. And that makes this camera very, very versatile and can do a lot of very cool things. This says that it'll do up to ISO 25600. That is a lie. Physically it'll do it, but it looks like crap, and I would never shoot anything at 25,600 on this camera. I would basically stick to around 1600, and even that gets a little dicey because video noise is a lot more difficult to deal with than photo noise. What else can I talk about this camera? Oh, it has tons and tons of cool features on it. There's focus peaking right in the camera, which means all I have to do is sort of look at the screen and it will tell me if whatever I'm looking at is in focus or not. And that's critically important when I use my adapter, because when you use the adapter on this and you put the big lenses on, they're all manual focus. So the only time I know for certain that things are in focus is either with my eye, which sucks, or looking at the focus peaking that's on this screen. The other cool thing is zebra highlights. So if I'm completely overblowing something or blowing it out, overexposing, it will tell me that it's overexposed. Let's see, other cool things. It has Wi-Fi, and it's pretty good Wi-Fi. It works perfectly well. What else? This thing has so many very, very cool functions on it. It has different picture profiles, and I talked about that in a different video where I was trying like hell to get the Vlog installed. Lots of custom settings and dials on here. I literally have, what do I have here? I have 10 different function buttons. 5 physical ones on here, and then 5 on the touch screen on the swing out screen here, and they will all do different things, so it will very quickly get me to where I need to be. And you know, when you're filming, when you're shooting, that's sometimes one of the most important things is the ergonomics of the camera, where the buttons are, how to get to your screens that you need to quickly to change things. And Panasonic did this right. They were super, super smart in giving filmmakers everything they could possibly want in a compact DSLR video camera. One other super cool function of this camera that I love more than anything is, number one, you can record as long as you have a memory card for, and the memory cards are just regular SD cards. Number two, it will never overheat. I did some recording on this. I recorded two 2-hour sessions where it just ran. It just recorded and the thing never even got warm. So I mean, that's one of the biggest problems with DSLRs and having their sensors collect information for however long they do. Most will only allow you to do 20 minutes or 30 minutes at a time. In fact, it was this camera right here. It would only do 10 minutes at a time because it gets too warm. But that's just, that's just by the manufacturer. They decide how long you can do that. This one will be as long as you possibly can have a memory card or the battery last. And that's another cool thing about this camera is the battery life. Oh my God. So like a lot of things, it has a little battery meter and it's got 3 bars on the battery meter. And after 2 hours of recording, I had 2 out of 3 battery dashes left, which means I only used about half the battery. Now I've heard reports that maybe it dies quickly after that, but the fact of the matter is this ran for 2 hours collecting video on a single card, on a single battery, and I didn't have any problems at all with it. The video looks amazing, and I'm super happy with this as a video camera. Okay, let's talk about the last camera I've got, and it is this big giant one. This is my Nikon D810. Sorry, that doesn't need to be on there. And of course, this also is a vertical grip that doesn't need to be on there. That comes off just like that. And so this is basically the camera by itself with the big stupid lens on it. Anyway, so I'm a Nikon guy. If you want to say some sort of brand loyalty, I have to Nikon. And the reason is in 1990, I'm gonna call it 90, 91, whatever. I had an old Nikon film camera, the Nikon 5005, and that's kind of where it all started. And then 10 years after that, I don't know, maybe 10 years after that, when the first digital DSLRs came out for Nikon and Canon, I kind of went and I held both of them, and then Nikon felt better, so I got the Nikon D70. And you buy a couple lenses for it, you buy a flash for it, and then the next round of cameras come out, and I bought a D2X. This is when I was doing weddings, and I thought I needed a professional camera. It was an extremely expensive camera, $4,600, I believe, at the time. In fact, I had a Sony digital camera before that. It was the F707, and I don't know, I'm getting very complicated. I've had a lot of cameras in the last 15 years. So I had the D70 at 6 megapixels. I had the D2X, and that was a upgrade to 12 megapixels. Then later, I went to a D700 that was also 12 megapixels, but the sensor size grew from the crop sensor to the full frame. Full frame is the same that you would have in a 35 millimeter camera. That's the same like size, so all the lenses work the same. So same megapixels, different sensor size, the pictures that came out of that were just so much better, so much better. From there, I went to a D800, and that was a jump from the 12 megapixels to 36 megapixels. And at the time, I was doing some video projects, and that was okay with video, but then the D810 came out, this one, and it was slightly better with video, and it was a slightly better camera. They had fixed some of the weird problems with the D800, and this is what I'm using today. It's a D810, it's 36 megapixels, it's full frame. ISO is good until about 6400, and then it sort of falls apart after that, so I'm not really... this isn't necessarily what you would call a low light camera. It's more of a studio camera, and that's what I do primarily. I do a lot of studio work, so it's important to me to have all the megapixels, and then secondly, it's important for me to have video, and then thirdly, I would be interested in lower light or some of the other crazy things that the professional cameras are doing, like 13, 14 frames per second, which I certainly don't need. This, I believe this does 6, 5 maybe, which is fine for me because I'm not doing sports, I'm not doing a lot of very fast work. Anyway, so that's giving you just the rundown of the cameras that I have, the reasons why I have them, and going back to the what camera should you buy question, I don't fucking know, because I don't know what you're gonna be using it for. I said in the beginning, your cell phone is probably the best camera that you could buy. And as long as you're using it, that's the one that you should use. If you're gonna step up to a camera that's not your cell phone, you really have to ask yourself the important questions of what are you gonna be shooting? How often are you gonna be shooting? How much do you have to spend? Stuff like that. I don't know. Again, you gotta do your research, you gotta figure out your budget, and then you have to decide if you want something with the hassles that go along with a DSLR. And not just the hassles of a DSLR, but the upkeep. There's maintenance to these. So you can see there's a sensor right in there, and there is nothing protecting that sensor. So when you change lenses, dust can get in there, and then you either have to have it professionally cleaned, which I had done for a couple of years, and then I decided, well, this is dumb. I might as well just do it myself. And you can get a cleaning kit, which freaks you out because you're actually touching that sensor, which not the bestest ideas ever. Anyway, this is going too long, and I'm sorry it has. So this has been all my cameras that I have used in the past. This one, not so much anymore. This one I would still use if I was doing any kind of underwater stuff. This one I would use if I was just walking around town somewhere, if I needed to, just for documentation or whatever. This obviously is for movies. And then this one is my bread and butter, making all the model pictures that I take, and any kind of product pictures that I take. And there you have it. So it matters more about what you're going to be using the camera for than what kind of camera you should buy. Until we talk again, see you later.